It's hard to realize that not long ago we needed servers for everything. We needed web servers, database servers, mail servers. What I'm trying to say is we still need servers, however, not in every instance. Think of it this way. What if I simply wanted something on my web application to send a message? What if I wanted my database server to trigger some operation? What if I wanted my mail server to send me something every time it was close to the log getting filled? Enter Azure functions. Azure functions are serverless, meaning that they don't really require a server to stand up. These are triggered. They are triggered via code. Did I spell triggered right? They're triggered via code. What ends up happening is an Azure function, let's say via a HTTP binding, will get triggered because some parameter is sent to the Azure function, and the Azure function will return a value based on that input. So you may have a HTTP binding that sends a value into the Azure function, and the Azure function, as a result of that input, will send an output. And maybe that output is an image, maybe it's a log, maybe it's a message, maybe it's an email, maybe it's writing something to a database. It really doesn't matter. But you don't have to stand up a server to accomplish that task. When a HTTP trigger is called and is calling an Azure function will kick off, process whatever needs to be processed, and send out if there's anything to send out. Look at it this way. Simply put, if you are shopping on any site and you're buying something, when you shop, you are selecting items. When you e-shop, you're selecting items. And when you select an item, you are putting those items in your cart, are you not? When you put that item in your cart and you add items to your cart, eventually you decide to determine that you want to buy them, and you specify your shipping information. You specify your payment information. The purchase is confirmed after that point, and you are perhaps sent an email letting you know that you purchased the item successfully. The fact of the matter is, this whole allowing you to browse while you're e-shopping, browsing items in that store, allowing you to place items in your cart, allowing you to select shipping information, payment information, sending a confirmation to you, letting you know on screen that the purchase was successful, and then sending you an email confirmation when the item has been shipped. You can think of all of these as serverless functions. They don't need entire servers with an OS and hardware and infrastructure underneath it for them to perform. What ends up happening is you start to think in your mind, well, what is the benefit of that? What is the benefit of going serverless? Well, they're massive. They don't really have serverless functions. Azure functions don't really have the overhead that web servers do and database servers do and infrastructure does. You don't have to worry about managing and maintaining entire infrastructure and operating system and applications. All you really have to do is make sure that you have written the code and that your code performs the way you want it to perform based on the function that you have written. Well, let me elaborate on that some more. Since I said these are serverless, that means the scalability of these is massive. We can send out, for example, 1 or 2, let's say, confirmations in my email or e-shopping example. We can send 1 or 2 email confirmations. We can process 1 or 2 payments, or we can process thousands or millions of them as we need to, really rapidly. From a security perspective, this is extremely secure because I will send out that email, the function will send out the email, and then essentially fall apart or simply die or cease to exist. The attack surface, as is referred to in InfoSec, is very small if it's existing at all, and it's nearly impossible to penetrate because that Azure function, that serverless function that is sending out that email, as I said, is only going to be alive for a fraction of a second. How long does it take to send an email out? A fraction of a second. So that function that will start up, that Azure function that will start up from the serverless platform that was triggered by sending some entity from your e-shopping mall to say that the purchase was confirmed, go and send an email, that function will only be alive for a fraction of a second. Maybe 2 milliseconds or 3 milliseconds, and then it will just die. So from the perspective of scalability, functionality, substantially lower overhead, and nearly zero attack surface, yeah, there is kind of, but it's very small because there is no infrastructure for you to worry about. Azure functions and serverless computing are the answer. So as I was stating, your code coupled with events and data results in an Azure function. So you basically bind your code to events, and Azure function will take care of the rest. So think of it. You can schedule a trigger to be fired, right? These are triggers that trigger a Azure function. Events that fire a trigger, for example. And then you fire the trigger, Azure Functions does the work, and whatever it may be, it takes care of it. And if it needs to scale, in the example that I was giving you about eShop or eMall, imagine sending out hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of emails, sending confirmations, letting everybody know that the payment was made, that the shipping charges are X or Y, when to expect the shipment, and sending them updates or status notifications letting them know how far along their product is from being received. Azure Functions, serverless environment, serverless computing.